This is the Daily English Podcast with Chris and Teacher David. To get the full text for this episode, click the link in the description or go to speakenglishwithchris.com.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of our podcast. I am joined with Chris and today we are going to be speaking about whether or not it is necessary to get a university or a college degree. This is something that I have spoken about a lot and I thought it would be an interesting topic for our discussion today. And so something that I have been thinking about before we started recording today is what kinds of jobs require a university degree, because there are some jobs out there, for example, if you wanted to be an actor, if you wanted to work on the radio, or if you wanted to do a number of different jobs that don't require a university degree. However, I do believe that there are some of them that absolutely do require one. So, for example, if you want to be a doctor, or maybe if you want to be an architect, or perhaps if you want to do anything that involves a lot of risk or that possibly puts you makes you responsible for people's lives, and I think that these are the jobs that absolutely require a university degree. But where things become a little bit unclear are for other types of jobs that you can learn as you go. So for example, if you wanted to work in something like marketing, helping companies or individuals sell products and services, then perhaps a university degree is maybe not so necessary. It's a bit difficult to talk about this because initially I thought perhaps jobs that require a lot of responsibility should require university degrees. However, if you worked in something like marketing, perhaps you would have a lot of responsibility. And so it's not so clear as to how we can decide or define how important a job is or not, or how much responsibility should be required in order to have a degree. So, Chris, what do you think about this? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you raise a lot of different points there. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the kind of jobs that require a university degree. And to me, they're probably the more what I would call traditional jobs, right? Like working for the government, being a civil servant. Normally, they would require a university degree. Or if you wanted to be, for example, a doctor or a vet or somebody who works in the media, often you would require a university degree. Or even some of, let's say, the top companies in your country may require university degrees. So these are what you could call the more traditional kind of jobs. But then there's a lot of jobs which I would say are not really well covered by the kind of education that you get in some of the more popular universities, especially in the UK where we're from. So let's say, you mentioned marketing. I think that there are a lot of degrees that teach people marketing, but this is just an example. But at the same time, you could have, let's say as an example, a university degree is 3 years, okay, or 4 years. And during that time, you could have got 3 years of experience in the sector that you want to work in. Let's say you got 3 years of experience in marketing, and that may actually stand you in better stead than just having a degree in the subject without any real experience. Does that make sense to you, David?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And I think then the next thing that I would probably want to discuss is the alternative paths that somebody can take if they choose to not go to university. And so you mentioned that in those 3 years, somebody could get 3 years of experience. And I think that in many disciplines, it's more valuable having experience under your belt instead of a degree, because in many industries, things change really fast, and actually, many people leave universities with skills that are out of date, and a lot of companies have to retrain these new members of staff that they are paying good money for. And so I think that this is a fair point, and it means that I think that we have to reconsider the education system that is tradition and the way that things go, because obviously, especially with things like the internet and technology and alternative ways of becoming educated, I think that we need to reconsider how we need to reconsider the requirements for certain jobs. But at the same time, I don't think that this means that traditional education has the completely wrong idea, because I think that formal study is important, and it is something that teaches valuable skills and valuable principles, and helps people develop certain habits that are important when working in the real world. But as I said, with new technology and new ways of educating ourselves, things definitely need to be reconsidered. And so an alternative path, and one that I think is great, is to work side by side with someone who has experience, and at the same time you can do some sort of study that involves reading of books, doing some activities, and working under the supervision of this person to implement what you have been taught. Again, this definitely depends on the industry, and I think that it's difficult to talk about alternative paths for education, because usually we generalize, but I think that each profession needs to have a different approach and have different standards and different ways of educating people. And I think that the conversation is difficult to have when we talk about education as a whole, instead of talking about specific professions. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you said, it's difficult to generalize, and it really depends on the kind of job or the kind of career that you want to go into. And I think maybe the best thing to do is to do some research about the career that you're interested in, and look at the paths of people who have done that career before. Do the people who do the job you want to do, are they normally university graduates? Have they normally got 1 degree or 2 degrees or no degrees? I mean, I think it's different in every different job or industry. But another thing that I think is important is that some people might identify people who don't go to university as dropouts. And we hear this word like school dropout or high school dropout, or even university dropout, people who have dropped out of the education system. But in some situations and in some jobs, if you're simply just going straight into the path that you want to take or the career that you want to take, then that's not really dropping out at all. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. And I think that it's easy for us to forget that once upon a time, a long time ago, the way that most people, if not all people, were educated was through what we would call an apprenticeship. And so they would actually not go to a university, but they would work alongside someone and get trained in this way. So why don't we have a term for people who dropped out of that approach, right? But I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that in the recent years, it has become negative to drop out of university. But we should remember that once upon a time, it was normal to learn a trade in what we now call the alternative path.
Absolutely. I think in certain jobs, in certain professions, doing an apprenticeship can be really helpful. But I mean, we've been talking about some alternative paths, but you have to recognize that there are some things at university that you learn, perhaps even outside the subject that you're studying. Let's say that you're studying history. But that wouldn't be everything that you're learning. You'd probably also be learning some communication skills, how to communicate with other people effectively, and even some debating skills and skills of persuasion, which could also be useful in a job, let's say a sales job, or in other careers as well.
Absolutely. And I think with the example that you just gave, I think one of the most important skills that you learn with a history degree is how to do research and how to gather information together and come to conclusions, something that is extremely helpful in a lot of jobs out there. And I think that, moving on a little bit, I think something that a lot of people worry about when going to university is whether or not they will get a return on their investment, because going to university is very expensive. It either means paying a lot of money upfront or taking out some sort of loan that usually takes most of your life to pay off. And so the big question is, going to university, does it give us a return on our investment? This is a very general question, Chris, but what would you say about that?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer, first of all, but I think it depends on what you're studying. If you're studying something which you could learn just as easily on a job, let's say something practical like business studies or marketing or media studies, or I'm just naming some different subjects here. I mean, there could be many others that you could learn while on a job. If you're learning something like that, then maybe, just maybe, you could be working and learning these skills. But if you're learning something much more academic, we could say, like I just mentioned, history or some other degrees that might give you extra skills at the same time, which you couldn't learn from just doing a job, then maybe that would give you more that you could put into a career. I mean, it's difficult to say, I think.
And I think that one of the things that's causing problems or the confusion today is that once upon a time, or a long time ago, the purpose of university was to prepare people for specific jobs. But over the years, the university system, I believe, has become more of a business. And so there are courses offered in all sorts of things that don't necessarily have a clear path to employment. I have a friend of mine, and he always makes the point that he found a university course in a university prospectus in basket weaving. Wow. I can't remember which university it was, but the point is that there is a university degree available for absolutely anything and everything. And if a university can get students to sign up for a course, they will provide the course. And I'm not sure if this is in the best interest of students, because I think that most people, if not all people, go to university with the hope of being able to get a job afterwards. But in recent years, we are seeing that graduates are finding it more and more difficult to get employment. And I think part of that is because universities are offering courses in things that don't have a clear path to employment. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't know if the example you mentioned is real or not. It sounds crazy to me, but I think you've definitely got to look at what you're getting out of the course, and you know what the content of the course is, who's going to be teaching you, and you've got to really think about whether you're going to get value for money now. So I don't think you should choose a university course just on maybe what you think you'll get out of it, but actually think about the content and whether it's really going to be useful to you in the future. I think people have to think much more carefully now that university is getting more expensive and there are other options out there.
And I think that it's also important to touch on the topic of passion and following your dreams, because often there's a culture where we are told to follow our dreams, follow our passions, don't worry too much about money. And I think this also causes a lot of confusion because people or young people, often at the age of, 18 or in their early 20s, are choosing topics just because they feel good or it's something that they like doing. But at least in my opinion, what you like and what you're passionate about are not necessarily the best options for your career path. So let's say you are passionate about, tap dancing. There are people out there that I'm sure make a living out of tap dancing, but very, very few. And so I think it's important to think about your career prospects when choosing what you study at university.
Absolutely. And I should just say here that David and I are not trying to give you career advice for your career or your situation. We're not trying to tell you to go to university or don't go or do something else. It really depends on your own situation. I think for some people, going down a more traditional path will be more stable, or they'll be more comfortable doing something like that. And for some people, it just wouldn't work out. So I think you have to look at your own situation, right?
Absolutely. And so I think that we've spoken quite a bit today about whether or not you should go to university to get a degree. And I think that the conclusion that we've had today is that it really depends, and that you should definitely think about the situation carefully and do a lot of research and consider what implications your decision will make in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, yeah.
Thanks, Chris, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, David. This has been a really interesting conversation, and let's get together and have another one soon.
We will do. Right.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Daily English Podcast. Don't forget to sign up on my site using your email address to get all my latest updates. Just go to www.speakenglishwithchris.com and see you again soon.